This is Global TV Talk Show, and welcome back. I'm in San Diego, and we're not going to be talking politics today. We're going to be talking about workplace issues. And the general theme is stresses about women in a corporate setting. And with us is Adriana Fuentes and Natalie Turnetin. And women, hello and welcome. Natalie, what interests you about this topic? Of course, I can guess, but I want it to come from you.
Hello. What interested me specifically with this is that I haven't truly entered the workforce yet. I have a job, a part-time job at the community college that I go to, but I haven't entered a more corporate setting yet, and I'm sure that's going to end up happening down the line. Um, so I'm kind of in an interesting position where I haven't quite experienced it yet, but I would love to hear from those who have, kind of, so I have an idea of what's to come. And also, I'm in an interesting position because I'm part of the new generation that's going to be joining the corporate workforce, and that's going to be changing up what the workforce looks like. So,
So when you say new generation, is that called alpha?
no, I'm part of Gen Z. Um,
Okay, good.
But Gen Alpha is also, I think they're a bit young to join the workforce, but Gen Z is the one that's really kind of coming in right now.
Yeah, well, the younger version, like I have a granddaughter who's 27,
Hmm.
and so she's Gen Z.
Yes.
But you're on the other end. That's why I was wondering, is there a new name?
No, I'm still part of Gen Z.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm sure you've heard some of the war stories from ladies, um, innuendo, sexual stuff, um, concern about what are you talking about and how are you talking, that kind of thing in the workplace. There's a lot of stress factors. I'm sure you're familiar with from readings, but you haven't experienced that because you haven't really entered the workforce yet.
Exactly.
Don't be afraid.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You'll have lots of company. And Stephen, what do you think of all this?
I think in all seriousness, it's a major issue. I mean, everything I read a McKinsey report recently that while women live longer, they spend 25% more of that time in poor health. And part of that is, hopefully Adriana can address this at one point, is in the workplace, we ignore menopause and almost treat menopause like it's a disease or an affliction and avoid it and avoid talking about it. And only 1% of US companies have any kind of menopause benefits for women, which is, just ridiculous in my view. So yeah, I think I'm glad you're broaching this topic with the world today, Ed.
Adriana?
My God, I think I can talk in hours and hours about these topics. And Natalie is very lucky that is not been suffering yet. A lot of issues. I've been in the corporate world like for between 12 and 15 years in different countries. And definitely, this is why I was so interested to participate today in your show, Ed, because I'm not talking about just Mexico, in general in Latin America, because I have another colleague who's living in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and we discuss and we talk a lot about these issues, and there's so many. I mean, gender equal gap or gender pay gap is one of the ones, or the most important. The position of managers and directors in Mexico do not pay women the same as men, and that's pretty sad. I mean, in general, for all these kind of leadership positions, definitely they don't pay the same in Latin America. Balance between professional, personal, and family life is another big issue in Mexico. At least I remember, like a year ago, I have a boss that, he was traveling all the time, and he was asking me, like to connect at 8 p.m. Because he was at the airport, with some free time, and he wanted to talk with me about some projects. And I was like, at 8 p.m., I don't work at 8 p.m. I want to spend time with my boyfriend, or in the gym, at the gym, or with my son. Why I need to connect at 8 p.m.? Because you have a free time. So this is kind of the typical situation that happened in the big companies here in Mexico. So definitely no balance between family and professional life. Limited advancement opportunities. Women definitely, we don't have the same opportunity with kind of training and mentoring opportunities. So I can go on and on and on, and there's so many things that definitely we face in today in corporate work. We can hear you, Ed.
I don't know about anybody else, but I lost Ed. Is it?
Yeah, no, we can't hear him.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for Ed, let me tell you something. One of the things I've read recently that supports what Adriana is saying, not just in Mexico or Latin America, but even here in the United States. And I'm going to read this just for effect. This again comes from McKinsey. At the current pace of progress, and this came out last month. So at the current pace of progress, it would take 22 years for white women to reach parity in the US workforce, and it would take more than twice as long for women of color. That's where we are today. So it's
Sure,
definitely.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, you're back, Ed. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I
took over
I
for
don't
you.
know what happened there. Okay, Kathy Hine, welcome.
Hey, Ed.
Okay, this is Kathy Hine in Connecticut, and she's the president of Living Abroad.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay,
I've read your stuff for years.
Oh, thank you. We
okay,
just
this is Christian Ternetten. He's between things. Actually, he's doing a lot of jobs right now, and he's based in Orange County, California. And also Adriana Fuentes is an author and a marketing pro, and she's based in Mexico City. And Ken Lloyd, wave your hand. Dr. Ken Lloyd is in LA, San Fernando Valley, well-known author, and we'll ask you to hold up to press the button and use my screen share to display your new front cover of a book about what's the title?
It's part of the Dummies series, Performance Appraisals and Phrases for Dummies. It's the new edition. I had written the original 15 years ago, and so much has happened in appraisals since then that they had said, "Would you do a new one?" I said, "Of course." So it's coming out in December. But thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, also on the program on the panel is Natalie Ternetten, who's representative of Gen Z, and not yet fully employed, but working as a consultant in Orange County to what, the college? Yes, Fullerton College?
Yes, I'm an English tutor.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. And you're a senior?
No, I'm a sophomore.
A sophomore. Oh my God, genius. That's really impressive. Okay, author and leadership coach Stephen Howard is coming to us from Phoenix today. And coming to us from Dublin is Joseph McGuire, who, as you could see him right there. And he's written this book. You can't really see it because it's so small, Face Facts. And here I am looking at the camera sideways, but now I'm looking at it this way, Face Facts. So what you see is what you get, Joseph, or you maybe not, right?
Maybe not in some cases, Ed. Especially when we're looking at some people in the public eye at the moment, but we won't go into that in too much detail here.
I know, and unfortunately, we'll probably be seeing more and too much. So, Kathy, thank you. This is like the first time I think you've been on the show in few years. I
In a
can't
while,
remember.
yeah, in a while. I was just curious and interested in the topic.
Yeah.
Only because it keeps coming up. And, you know, it would be great to support women in the workforce for leadership roles. So I was just curious to see what everybody had to say in this group and, you know, what I can do to help.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so Adriana, why don't you tell us more? As I started to say, about 2 years ago, I was fortunate to have a guest, a woman, about the impact of menopause on women in the workforce. And if there was a way to get menopause as a health benefit, recognized health benefit within company benefit plans. And she's an advocate of that, and I think she's had major breakthrough in some large companies. Adriana, in Mexico, is menopause a normal health benefit for women in the workplace?
No, not at all. Actually, doing some research for my last book, that the name is Strong Women Speak About Sex, and one of the chapters is sex and menopause. And unfortunately, in the workplace, they think, especially men, they think menopause is a disease. So it's incredible, to think that for them it is possible to think that it's a disease. So I think it's very important to educate men in the workplace that it's not a disease. It's like a process that all women, we have to pass through, and there's many emotional, physical changes, but I mean, we can deal with that. But the same thing when I talk with some police in different companies, small, medium, but large companies, they are facing that. So my next book, I'm going to talk more about not just menopause, different I guess stage of women in this age, because we have to really try to talk more, to educate more men, to educate more in general people in the workplace, because it's so frustrated that they think, we have to stay home because we have a disease. So yeah, incredible that this is happening, but I'm doing my research, of course, and I will work, I guess, in the next few months about that.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Joseph, what's your take, being from Dublin, and is menopause a normalized healthcare benefit in companies in Ireland?
No, not at this point. No, there's more lip service being paid to it, and not just menopause, but perimenopause are coming up as big issues for women.
What does
Um,
para mean?
Perimenopause is where women are moving towards menopausal state, but they're not, but it's a transition stage.
Okay.
Obviously, it's not something I'm dealing with directly. I'm not trying to be smart with that, but it is coming up. Certainly, I'm hearing it anecdotally from quite a number of women I'm meeting in a networking space, that it's a big issue in terms of their mental and emotional state, but also the level of their how it's impacting their performance, and how that's being viewed and how that's rather probably not being viewed, and not being acknowledged, and not being understood or appreciated, where women are being, I guess, undermined.
So I think I'm going to ask Kathy to talk to this issue. I'm not educated, but I certainly know about it. And Kathy Hein, can you give us your view about this topic? And is it commonly talked about in large company settings?
So I know what's being talked about in company settings now, which is wellness, and that wellness and well-being, and that's falls under that category. And the issues are, when a woman is in a top position, there's a lot of stress. So that compounds the issue, whether it's whatever their symptoms are. And so that's going to impact their day-to-day work, or it may not. But in order, if someone is suffering from symptoms, before they actually go through menopause, I think companies are starting to be aware of that, and they're starting to take that into consideration with these new health and well-being programs that they are instituting in corporations. So well-being is a big buzzword in the corporate space right now. And we actually, in our destination guides, have a whole section on that and how to support people in no matter what country they're in. They can find resources and have private discussions with doctors in countries, or even teledoc about that. So I think it's going to be, going forward, more supported than it is today.
So the fact that there are female CEOs and C-suite in very large companies right now, and have been, like General Motors or Mondelez, that come to mind right away, and others, of course. So it should be, in my view, normalized fast. And so thank you for sharing. More than half of our audience, according to LinkedIn, is female, corporate, and mostly US, but it's worldwide, and corporate, or services to corporate through the mobility and HR space. And well-being is, as it should be, a hot topic, healthcare.
And just to add something about what Catherine said, that is, of course, very interesting and true. This is why it's so important to have the balance between professional, personal, and family life. It's like, exactly, I mean, we pass through all this emotional crisis and all that. So this is so important that bosses and leaders respect our free time. I don't have to, pay extra time, work extra time. I don't need to exactly answer or connect in a Zoom call with another, people around the world. I'll take 8 p.m. or 6 a.m. So this is how why it's so important to really, like, people understand the balance between professional, personal, and family life. I mean, here in the corporate world, also the divorce percentage, they're so high because, if both couples, they work, they don't have balance between their personal and professional life. So, I mean, they travel all the time, they don't see each other very often. And then, after a few years, they're just like two roomies living in the same place. So that's kind of one thing that is very high, the percentage of the divorces here, at least in Mexico.
I think that it's probably high in the US too, but nobody talks about it. So it's kind of don't talk about it, but it should be, because it's so normal. So keeping that in mind, and a bit of a PR push here, on December 12th, that's 12/12, our New York event is going to cover this topic, the psychological safety in the workplace. And Stephen Howard has coined the phrase humany, which is a combination of human interest and harmony and other things, which he'll get into in just a minute, much deeper and better than me. But we're going to be talking about this psychological safety in the workplace and the psychological contract between companies and employees, particularly in a dual career dilemma. And we'll have Yvonne Quay, who's from the World Bank, and she is the trainer and the workplace guru about that topic. She's written a book, Yours, Mine, or Ours. Whose job is it? Yours, mine, or ours? And it's about we and not me, that kind of an approach that they take in the World Bank with high-powered dual career couples who go on assignment. And what happens to the spouse? in certain countries, the spouse cannot work. There's no permit. And so one of our speakers is Heather. She's a business psychologist based in London. She will lead the discussion about the research paper she did on behalf of REA, a US-based consultancy in New Jersey. And she's in London, and she authored a report, co-sponsored and for the Permits Foundation on this very, very topic. And she's going to be discussing that and the psychological contract and the ROI for companies to solve this issue, and equally benefit the assignee and family on assignment. In other words, total care, immersive care, duty to care, not duty of care. And that's the theme of our New York keynote workshop in the morning. In the afternoon, we're turning to domestic issues, but the same theme, particularly with a focus on real estate and the changes within the real estate industry and how it's impacting mobility. So that's our New York event. Kathy Hine and Michael Cadden have been invited to join. I hope you do and be involved. And I thank you as well for the invite to the KPMG holiday event, same day, same night. Thank you very much. Kathy, why don't you talk a little bit about your company and about the brand and how it helps people, how it helps companies. Kathy Hine.
Sure. So thanks, Ed, for that. Living Abroad has been creating destination guides since 1987. And I believe the reason we're still relevant is we're a trusted source of information. We have content managers that keep the information up to date. And we recently won an award at the London Forum for Expatriate Management meeting. Yeah, last week we won. We won an Emma for our content. And because we've added new content, as I mentioned before, on well-being, sustainability, and each destination has specific information for LGBTQ so that they can feel safe, they can decide if they want to move to that destination, if they are with a same-sex partner, and that has been very well received. So that was the portion of our report that we won an award for. But we cover a lot of, and I know, Ed, you talked about accompanying partners, and that is still an issue. In fact, I just wrote a blog post today about how the family needs to be supported because that does affect the company ROI, because the assignee that's being transferred, they have a lot on their plate. They have to make sure the family's happy and settled, and then they have to do their job in their new location. So how can we support the family? So our resources we have a big family section. We have all kinds of resources for families, housing and schools, and how to get connected, so that if it's an unsupported move or a lump sum, the company can invest in a subscription to our service and then be able to offer their relocating employees our information. So it's a win-win situation. And along with supporting the family is supporting the accompanying partner as well. It'll go right to the bottom line if a company does that.
What about the kids who go on that assignment too?
Yeah, we have a lot of resources for children, teenagers. It's all broken out. Also, a lot of times they're leaving behind an elderly parent because people are living longer and longer. So we have resources for that and how to deal with that when you're, miles and miles away in another country. And but the children often have, the younger they are, often have a harder time relocating. So we do have support services and destination specific information for the parents that they can look and see, how we can get the children involved in, maybe it's a sports program or some kind of group event where they can play with peers their own age. So it is important that the kids are happy. But I think it also falls a lot onto the parents to manage that. So we have support for the parents as well.
So we have, just as a time check, we have around 25 minutes or so remaining. So we want to make sure everybody gets to talk about themselves and their brand and how it impacts women in the workplace, and what's the impact the other way too. Natalie, the microphone is yours now. The camera will be on you. So what are you tutoring? And as a sophomore, do you worry about whether you should be doing this or whether it's a ticket to ride into something bigger, or all of the above?
Well, I would say that specifically within the tutoring program at my college, we have, I believe we have more women than men in the tutoring program. So I never really feel unsafe. I feel like they offer a lot of support. The tutoring program offers support to the people, the tutors, but also the professors that you work with specifically in the courses that you're tutoring. The professors offer a tremendous amount of support. I've been told time and time again, if anything ever makes me feel uncomfortable, I have 5 to 10 people I can talk to about it. So that never really has been much of a concern for me. And something I wanted to add a little bit earlier, kind of related to the discussion of menopause, but not exactly, was when I remember when I was in middle school and high school, if one of my fellow female students, if they had like period cramps or except like they had a reason where they needed to step out because of like a bodily issue pertaining to like specifically female anatomy, I remember that teachers, specifically the male teachers, they tended to push back a little bit. I saw that specifically in my PE classes, like if my fellow female students had cramps and they couldn't partake in some of the exercises we were doing, the PE teachers, they didn't really care. In some other classes I had, some of the students would try to talk about how they had to leave the classroom, and the male teachers kind of pushed back as to why they had to leave. Like, was it really that bad? And although that isn't workplace relevant necessarily, I think it does set kind of a dangerous precedent for these young women. The idea that if we're thinking of school kind of as like a proto workforce, right, where you have people who are above you kind of as your boss, in the way that like teachers and students kind of have a transactional relationship in terms of like getting your assignments in. Having that early proto workplace environment and having women for their own bodily issues being shut down kind of seems like a really bad way to start this idea in young women's heads that they can't really talk about what's going on with their bodies, and that it's not a good enough reason to actually step away from work for a day or have some time to work on something because you can't do it in that moment. And so I think that then when you see, people not wanting to talk about like menopausal issues and proto-menopausal issues, that probably starts somewhere. And I would say that might start in schools. So that's kind of my take on it.
Well, thank you for sharing that and that personal approach. I'm sure, for me, I'm not privy to that kind of an experience or having to be a manager in that kind of a situation. But that's just because of my own experience. But I think your story is really interesting from an educational point of view. To me as a guy and all the guys out there, hello, pay attention and think of your daughter or your wife. And Natalie, I have to be honest and say that I'm really appalled that some guys who are teaching in a leader role of young women would be so coarse. Of course, they can go out of the room, and feel free. That's my take. Dr. Ken Lloyd, what do you think?
Well, I totally agree with what you're saying. That's absolutely absurd and unacceptable behavior by a teacher. To me, part of the problem is that that behavior, in addition to being insulting and degrading to the female student, is also setting an expectation. Oh, this is how women are treated by adults, if you will, using that term liberally, in leadership positions. And it almost conditions them to accept this kind of second-rate treatment when they get into the workforce. So it's reprehensible at the time, but it sets that, oh, this is how it works. And it isn't how it works. It certainly is not how it should work. And tying in as well, Natalie is working not just in some job where she can make some money, but like members of Gen Z, it's fulfilling to her. It's interesting. She's doing some good. It has some relevance. And Gen Z in particular, people are looking for that kind of experience. And when their work becomes less than that, it's not meaningful anymore. I don't want just a job. I don't want to just get paid. I want to do something that's important and making an impact and helping people. That's where she's going. That's why she's in such a wonderful role in tutoring in English. It's a wonderful topic. I'm sure it's quite fulfilling. In order to deal with these kinds of issues in the workplace, certainly individuals in leadership position, number one, have to recognize what's going on, the kinds of topics that we're talking about today. How in the world today are women paid 82 cents for every dollar that men are made out there in the US workforce today? And it's up to us in the organizations where we're working to make sure that these kinds of issues are addressed fairly, openly, and equitably, and also to go beyond that, whether it's in our writings and our podcasts and our dealings and our professional networks and association to help move the world to a more equitable, open, friendly, safe, welcoming place. And that includes the world of work.
Joseph, please comment.
Yes, there's so many aspects to that. Firstly, it's wonderful that Natalie is here. That she, as a young person, is speaking openly on these topics, and hopefully it's a harbinger of what's possible. That young people are coming into the workforce with greater confidence, willingness, and ability to speak up and be very articulate and be very clear, because that's so much needed. And hopefully the dinosaurs will be weeded out, because that's also very much needed, because as Ken said, that type of behavior is degrading, it's unacceptable, and it does set a marker for what's expected, and what has been in many circles acceptable. I'm typically called in to work with women on an individual basis where they've had challenges with men, at various levels of organizations, and sometimes in their private lives as well, where I'm typically called in to profile the men so that the women know exactly who they're really dealing with, the personality, the character, the behavior, and to know how to actually address them in a very clear, confident way. So I'm not dealing with the corporate side of it as such. I'm dealing with people on an individual basis. But clearly, so many women have been mistreated for long periods of time for all sorts of strange reasons. And it really is time to stop. And I know that's a very global kind of statement, but the more any of us can do, the more any of us can contribute to that changing, the better, really.
Oh, I love your input. Thank you very much. Stephen Howard, what say you?
Well, it's something we can all start to do, in our small corners of the world. And I'm glad Natalie's here as a young person talking about it. I'm glad Adriana's writing about it, partly as her writing coach. I'm glad to see her tackling these tough subjects and producing great works on it. But I'll share you a story. This was happening in the UK about 5 years ago. And a teacher asked a group of fifth graders, so I guess that was like age 9 to 10, to draw a picture of a police officer, a firefighter, and an astronaut. So draw 3 pictures. And 80% of the children, including 80% of the girls in the classroom, drew a male policeman, a male fireman, and a male astronaut. And the teacher, after showing the pictures and having a little session, brought into the room a female police officer, a female firefighter, and a female astronaut. And boy, I've told that story in my keynote speeches sometimes, and the audience just goes, oh. But some of you have heard me say this before. It goes back to as parents and teachers, when girls on the playground start trying to organize things, or in the classroom, typically someone shuts them down and says, Susie, don't be so bossy. But if little Billy does the same thing, he's showing leadership skills. And this is just, so one of the things I love about what I get to do in life is, one of the programs I teach a lot is called Communicating Assertively. And I just love it when females learn how to communicate assertively, stand up for, like Natalie's case, or a young teenage female to be able to stand up to their teacher and say, I'm sorry, sir, I need to go out now. And I don't need to explain to you why I need to go out now. You need to trust me, and walk out the door. And, and if repercussions happen, then hopefully the school administrators and the other faculty and her parents would support her in doing that. But that is an assertive way of taking your rights and exercising your rights as a woman for your bodily function. So sorry, I get on my soapbox a little bit sometimes, but that's how I feel.
Perfect. Who wants to talk?
If I may, really quick, that reminds me of an activity that I did in Girl Scouts one time, where we were told to think of they gave us different occupations, like doctor or teacher, things like that, right? And we would discuss whether the first thing that came to our mind was it a male or a female, and we talked about why we thought that was, and what we thought we could do to change that. And so definitely I've done activities regarding that exact same topic, where with so many of these jobs, the first thing we think of is a man. We don't always think of a woman, and there are so many women who hold those jobs. And definitely I think there needs to be more of a discussion about these unconscious biases that we have, and try to start to change those.
So Adriana, in Mexico, you have a female president now, and so that
Yes.
is right on target, isn't it?
I'm so happy. I'm very happy. Definitely, it's time for women in Mexico. And yeah, I think, it's the big opportunity that for women to really talk, to work, to support each other in many ways. So I'm very happy for her, for us, of course. And I was going to say that I think all leaders, especially men here in Mexico, they should read Stephen Book, the Human Leadership, and his new book, Human Mindset, because it's a time to really change mindset and change the word, how leadership is facing many things. So yeah, I think we can work together as men and women supporting each other, but really try to understand our our basic needs, and yeah, help each other in the workplace to be easier for everybody. So happy with what is happening in Mexico now, and trying to, of course, write and talk about more topics, as I was talking in my last book about women and sex, because we don't talk about sex in Mexico and in Latin America. So this is why I decided to write that book about Strong Women Speak About Sex. And my next book, I will be talking about something that definitely, it's a taboo in Mexico, but we'll talk later about it.
Well, stay tuned. Okay, Christian, you've been quiet too much.
So one of the things that in our household we're very proud of and we really emphasize and really spend a lot of time on is to talk with our children, Natalie being the older one, about their day, and things like the stories Natalie just told come up. And while we can't change the school and we can't change the attitudes of some of the teachers as well as some of the classmates, what we can do is talk about it as much as we can, give our own input, role model. My wife, Erin, Natalie's mother, is a director, so she's an executive herself and has stories herself, of course, about the corporate world for a woman. And I think that a lot of the activities in the workplace regarding health and well-being, as global as they may be, hopefully carry over to the households with children, and particularly young women. Young boys also, they need to be brought up the right way as well, and definitely not as wannabe alpha males.
Kathy, let me ask you a question about work from home, working remotely versus in office, and on this topic. How has the work from anywhere, working remotely, impacted in-office politics and stress within the workplace? Because when we are working remotely more than half the time, maybe all of the time, it's totally different workplace environment. I don't know what I'm saying anything more than that.
Just listening to this conversation and having worked from home since last year, actually, I think it's very supportive of for women because you can be more comfortable in your home. You can step away if you want, and nobody needs to know. So I think there's more, I think it's more supportive actually of women, and I'm sure men as well. But what's happening now is companies are requiring people to come back into the office 2 to 3 days a week, which everybody I've spoken to is fine with that. Yeah, because they can pick and choose the days and they usually don't go in, So for instance, I'm in a bedroom community of New York City. So New York City is very quiet on a Monday and a Friday. So everybody that decides to go into work picks those 3 middle days. But when I have my Forum for Expatriate chapter meetings in New York, we had 2 corporates speak last time, one from H&M and the other one was, I think, KPMG talked about their how they're cutting costs and all that. But the woman from H&M, the global mobility person, was very happy with her schedule. She had to be in the office 2 days. They have one office in New York City and one in New Jersey. She lives in New Jersey. And she said it was a really great situation for her and her family. She has a daughter. So I think has been a positive. I'd be curious to hear what anybody else has noticed about the work from home, after COVID situation.
Okay, who's up? How about Christian?
Well, my situation is a bit weird in that I don't, in that sense, have a job, so there's no office to go to. But even before that, our local office had been closed since COVID, and eventually we got rid of that very expensive Southern California lease, and all worked remotely. I do think that it has a lot to do with what kind of work you do and where the talent is. In global mobility, it's interesting to see where companies end up. Some definitely have a lot of people going into the office. Some companies just don't have local talent to the extent that they could really enforce a hybrid day for every single employee. A lot of exceptions have to be made because I work in a niche, and there's not that many people around out there that do what I do, as Kathy knows. So my situation is a bit different, but I'm absolutely for hybrid, if not work from home. It's definitely been a blessing. Erin, my wife, has worked from home for a long time, 8 years, because her office is in Washington, D.C., on the other side of the country. And we've adapted and we've enjoyed working from home. And I don't see myself going into an office 5 days a week anymore.
So you told me earlier that you managed the team, everybody was remote.
Yes, because we had, well, first of all, the talent that I had in my team was already spread out over the United States. Then we had a local office, the one in Irvine, where a few people could have commuted to it, but it doesn't make any sense anymore if the team is too small, right? So at some point I was asked to come into the office, and then I did the math and told the people that demanded that of me that I would either be with one other person or by myself. So there's not a whole lot of collaborating going on if I'm by myself sitting in an office with myself. And that was the end of that idea. So it depends also on the numbers, right? If you're in a team of 10 and they're spread out, what point is there in going to an office? Erin, my wife, had an office in Los Angeles, well, first in Pasadena, then in Los Angeles, which would have meant a long commute. But the problem was the people that were working there had nothing to do with her in terms of how the organization was structured. So it wouldn't have made any difference whether she was sitting in a house or sitting in an office where the coworkers were, nice people, but they had really nothing to talk about.
Interesting, isn't it? Ken Lloyd, what do you think of all this? And what is the answer? Now, I'm getting old, and I think you are too, but you don't look it. So, I mean, what's going to be? And so we're actually talking about people who are a lot younger than us, and what the future of work will be in this coming year. Let's just say, okay, what's going to happen after January 1, especially with the change in the country, the apparent change, and what's going to happen? Is it going to be more male macho dominated rules, like with Amazon saying you better work or you come into the office or you're not going to work here, something like that.
That's obviously at this point so hard to say what's going to be going on in that regard. I don't know. You're talking about age. I use the Google. I'm fine. I'm current. So hopefully that's a joke. But looking at hybrid workplaces for a minute, and hopefully that trend will continue. Where perhaps you'll come in 2 to 3 days a week. Studies are showing people are actually more productive and even more effective working off-site. And you think about it, well, yeah, number one, we don't have to waste all that time in a commute. And equally important, it's not just wasted time, it's stressful. It's hard. And you've seen how people are driving. I don't know what happened post-COVID. It's sort of like all the rules of the road kind of stopped. And underneath it is all this road rage. It's horrible driving out there to and from work. So you've got that going on. It's costing them money in fuel. It's wear and tear on the car as well as on their bodies, when they can actually work and get more done without the interruptions that they face in the workplace, without hanging out at the water cooler, without the extra time at lunch. So there are some benefits. Certainly we do need the face-to-face interaction at some points. There'll be meetings and all that we'll want to make sure that we maintain, because we can get isolated. There are a lot of benefits, right? And I think that's going to continue into the future. In terms of, are we now entering the macho era in the U.S.? So hard to predict any of that at this point. We just have to really do what we think is right in our leadership positions in the organizations, to be open, fair, equitable, responsive, receptive to new ideas, engage in two-way communication, and Stephen was saying, keep practicing even more so humany in your organizations, and that will deal with so many of the issues and certainly help us work more effectively with new generations that are coming in. They're not going to put up with a lot of the nonsense that has gone on in organizations. I know all of us in our individual roles have already taken steps to make the workplaces more open and fair and equitable. And I look back at the organization I stayed with for 18 years, and we did that because it was right, because it was a smart thing to do, and it was a just and fair thing to do, to make sure that we're balanced in terms of race, color, religion, gender, sexual preference, any of those factors, because that's the way to operate a business. And hopefully in our individual roles, we'll do that, serve as role models. But I don't know, to me, it's quite open as to where everything is going from this point. But I do want to tell one story, since storytelling seems to be quite popular. I have a friend who lives in Fullerton, who has been a friend of mine since elementary school. He's a physician. When my oldest daughter was 5 years old, he came over to our house and I introduced her to him. And just as backstory, my wife's 3 cousins, female cousins, are physicians. My wife's cousin from Russia, who immigrated from Russia, is a physician. Our daughter's pediatrician was female. So all these female doctors, a female doctor from Russia, female pediatrician, female physicians for my wife. My daughter, I then introduced to Mike, and I said, and Mike is a doctor. And my daughter 5-year-old daughter looks at my wife and says, Mommy, a man doctor. She says, so I said to Roberta, I said, you're doing it right. And today that daughter is a physician. And so much of this comes back to our parenting and how we're dealing with our kids, how we're educating them at home, what kinds of values we share. You go onto AI, put in a receptionist, and it'll describe it, and it'll say that, yes, this is a position, and the person has it will, and then you'll see it'll be, and she does the following. So it's embedded out there. Receptionist, oh, that must be a woman. Just like Stephen was saying, well, firefighter and a police officer, astronaut, got to be men. It's out there, it's in the culture, and as parents as well as leaders, we have an opportunity to really help right some of those crazy, out of date, and archaic misperceptions.
Adriana, thank you so much for joining us today, and I welcome you to join another conversation. We'll try to get additional women on the program going forward under the same umbrella between now and Christmas. I'm not sure exactly when, but maybe your friend Ileana might like to join us also, and others.
Thank you very much, and thank you because you support us all the time with many shows, many topics, many issues. So thank you. For your support all the time with us.
Yeah, Kathy Hein, if you would like to join us again, that would be great. And if you would like to help spread the word to other women in the workplace that to come on, they don't have to stay for an hour. They can talk 5 minutes and leave if they need to. But I'm very interested to expand this idea.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
In conversation.
Yeah, real good. I've learned a lot personally. And you know what I try to do my thing, tell jokes, keep it breezy, keep things moving around. Because all of us can talk for an hour if we need to. So it's sort of hard to keep the reins pulled tight. But Stephen, thank you so much for being a co-leader here and helping me out. Stephen's going to give the closing keynote address of the New York event remotely.
My pleasure, Ed, and for all the men on the program. tomorrow is National Men Make Dinner Day. So gentlemen, get your spoons out.
I didn't know that. No, I think I'm gonna barbecue
Joseph,
chicken.
this is only the US, so you're probably okay. But,
We'll call that food for thought, okay?
food for thought.
Oh,
There you go.
brilliant.
There you go.
Food for thought. Oh, yes. Natalie, thanks so much for sharing yourself here. And please come back again. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, this has been great. Okay, you'll all get a copy of this program later today, probably after 5 o'clock. I've got a busy day here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.